Watch this.
Most elections are about voting someone in. Some, just the opposite. That's what's happening for one southern Idaho school district. A group of parents say one trustee is on the board for all the wrong reasons.
I am certain that the members of this committee agree that only U.S. citizens should vote in U.S. elections.
And we're pretty certain that's how it already works in Idaho elections. But that hasn't stopped a movement to make it even more not allowed. We're explaining the measure to double down on Idaho's voting criteria. You know, they don't call them invasive for nothing. A year later, and we still can't quite kick the mussels out of the snake. We've got what's next in the quagga saga. We are within 6 weeks of the November general election. Not sure if you had a chance to check out your sample ballot or maybe just take a peek at your absentee ballot sitting on your kitchen counter, but this one might take some time to get through. A lot of pages on some of them. Not only a president to pick, but you have a member of Congress to choose. All of your state legislators are on the ballot, county commissioners, prosecutor, and sheriff, a whole lot of judges. And depending on where you live, there's probably some school stuff to decide on, like levies and trustees. For voters in the Basin School District, this election isn't just about putting someone on a school board seat or in a school board seat, but actually removing one. There's a recall for Patrick Minto, who was elected just last year and whose 4-year term began at the beginning of this one. So the question, Aspen Shumpert, is what caused a group of concerned parents to kind of push this petition through and, well, put it to the people?
Yeah, they say these concerns really started when he first got into office in January. And again, specifically those concerns about Minto's motives. They say he was there to lower taxes instead of make decisions with the students' best interest in mind, wanting to cut certain programs. But as the year went on, more concerns came up. Later in the year, they said Minto engaged in shouting matches with community members, and parents felt like he was creating an environment out of fear and intimidation. The petition language says the group is not confident in Minto's ability to serve as an effective, trustworthy, and impartial board trustee.
We feel that board members' responsibility should be to put our students first without wrangling over ideologies or trying to advance a personal agenda. It should be also to value the input of constituents' concerns and points of views, whether he agrees with them or not. And Patrick Minto has proven that he's incapable of serving in this position with an unbiased and fair perspective and seeking the benefit of all of the students.
I did reach out to Minto earlier today and wasn't able to reach him, but he does have this statement in the ballot language. He says, quote, "The issue here is I refuse to support Idaho School Boards Association's gender policy, which forced pronoun usage, use of female bathrooms by male students, and potentially hiding gender transitions from parents in contravention of current state law." He says former board members who voted for the gender policy are leading the petition. Lulu denied that allegation and says there's people from all political points of view supporting the petition, and says the ballot initiative has nothing to do with what he's claiming.
Rather than truly addressing our genuine concerns and the impact they have on our kids and our community, he used a classic divisionary tactic. He's focusing instead on gender policies and former board members and things that aren't relevant to our recall effort.
She says this is about making sure school board members are there for the right reasons. Now, Brian, this is one of the smaller schools in Idaho. I think It's less than 400 students. So this does need a simple majority to pass, but also they need to have more votes than when he was voted in. So when I asked how much that is, she said it was 72.
72. Okay, so Basin School District, remind me, this is like Idaho City, Horseshoe Bend, that's what this is consisting of?
Mm-hmm.
I remember a few years ago, this is also the school district where well, at the time, it would have been Dorothy Moon, not part of the GOP chairwoman, but a legislator accusing that school district of pushing CRT on preschoolers in that district. So lots going on in that place right now. So
there is.
Kind of some of the social issues coming to a head. Thank you very much, Aspen.
Idaho's elections are secure. We do not see non-citizens trying to vote in Idaho elections. Sometimes we hear rumors or concerns of that. That is just not the case.
And that was Secretary of State Phil McGrain testifying in the Senate State Affairs Committee last March. There's no proof non-citizens have voted in any Idaho election, nor have they tried, he said. Yet House Joint Resolution 5, which he supported, passed through committee that day, then the full Senate 6 days later, and finally submitted to Mr. McGrain's office so he could put it on the ballot for this November. HJR 5 would change Idaho's constitution, specifically Section 2, Article 6. It says he or she offers to vote for the period of time provided by law if registered as provided by law as qualified elector. It says right now, with regard to who qualifies to be an elector, every male or female citizen of the United States, 18 years old, lived in Idaho for at least 30 days, they are eligible to vote. And yes, there's a typo in our Constitution, by the way. That's not the part they're trying to change, though. HJR 5 would add the line, no person who is not a citizen of the United States shall be a qualified elector in any election held within the state of Idaho. That's on your ballot this November, HJR 5. The question asks, shall Section 2, Article 6 of the Constitution of the state of Idaho be amended to provide that individuals who are not citizens of the United States may not be qualified electors in any election held within the state of Idaho? Question mark. And you may be asking, isn't that already covered in that first sentence of the Constitution with every male or female citizen of the United States, which is exactly what was asked when HJR 5 was discussed for the first time in the House State Affairs Committee, and it was answered this way.
The word every isn't exclusive. It just says that for sure, like, this group gets to vote. It doesn't say other groups can't.
Okay, so that's Jack Tomczak with Americans for Citizen Voting. He said the answer for some states was to change the part that says every or any in their constitution to the word only. And Mr. Tomczak came all the way from Minnesota, from an organization based out of D.C. with basically offices all over the country, to point out non-citizens are voting in local elections in places like New York City, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Oakland, 11 cities in Maryland, and 3 in Vermont. In local elections, mind you, like school boards, city council, maybe for mayor, but definitely not state or federal elections, which prompted this question by Representative John Gannon.
Can you give me a specific example of someone who is not a citizen of the United States who has voted in an Idaho election?
Mr. Tomczak.
Madam Chair and Representative, no, I can't, because there are no municipalities who have tried to implement this yet.
Which is what Phil McGrain said. There's no doubt this fear of non-citizens voting has been stoked by what has been happening and highly publicized at the U.S.-Mexico border, something that was said without saying during that committee hearing in March.
It is undeniable that the foreign citizen voting movement is very real and that a constitutional fix is the only solution.
So here we are with a potential constitutional fix. HJR passed through the State House, is on the November ballot. And some of you have been getting a look at what is on your ballot with absentee ballots showing up this week. Lynn in Meridian, she wrote in to ask several questions like electors, voters, citizens. Seems HJR 5 serves no purpose because our Constitution already has these provisions. What would be the point of any changes, she asked. Does HJR 5 prohibit legal non-citizen immigrants in Idaho from voting? She points out how long it takes for a resident to gain citizenship, all while living here, paying taxes, yet they get no say in the leadership of the country where they're working. Is this ballot measure targeting our ag and service workers in Idaho, Lynn wants to know. Well, we thought we would take those questions to Boise State political scientist Dr. Stephanie Witt, who we also wanted to help us understand the big question of why.
I think a thing to keep in mind is that a non-citizen is not the same always as an undocumented immigrant, right? In other words, there are millions of immigrants living in the United States who are non-citizens, but they have documentation. They arrived here legally. In the places that have allowed non-citizens to vote, I don't think the thought here is, oh, let's have a whole bunch of illegal immigrants voting. The thought is, these are people paying into our taxes. They own property in the jurisdiction. They're likely patrons of the school district with kids in school. So should they be shut out of any say in who governs the school district? Some cities have decided, no, they shouldn't be shut out.
So our Constitution, it says every male or female citizen in the United States, 18 years old, who has resided in this state of Idaho for like 30 days, can vote.
Yes.
They want to add to that. Is it necessary? Is every male or female citizen in the United States covered?
Well, here's the thing. We already have a federal law that requires that only citizens can vote in federal elections. There are no states that allow non-citizens to vote in state elections. So I think we're covered already, but this is a chance for supporters of the amendment to say, we're really cracking down on voter security. We don't want non-citizens voting. I think the point is only to reassure the voters that you are doing something to make the voting process more secure. It's absolutely redundant to what's already there in federal law and in our state constitution.
The question, I guess, is, are legal green card immigrants, primarily ag and service workers, the one this bill is targeting?
I think the fear is not really about green card long-term residents. I think the thing they're trying to fight against would be someone who's here illegally voting. But in screening so that voting only belongs to citizens, you do lock out of the process those long-term residents who've been paying taxes, living in our communities as legal immigrants. They're excluded from voting.
Dr. Witt mentioned HOA elections. That's an example of not knowing how far this measure might reach, because it does say any election. Those might be considered private clubs, though, unlike school boards or library districts. But the resolution, again, does say any election held within the state of Idaho. You also might be asking, what about that executive order that Governor Little signed with Secretary of State Phil McGrain this last summer? Well, that could change if a new governor comes in. So adding this to the Constitution or amending the Constitution would kind of make this more permanent. A yes vote on HJR 5 would approve adding that line to the Constitution. A no vote would keep it the way it is now. It's not easy to highlight 42 years of Rick Lance in just a few days, but we're trying. I said trying, not crying. I'm not crying, you're crying. Anyway, what better way to take you to the break than with some promotional spots featuring the man himself, like this one from 1987.
When you want the weather and you want it right.
Rick said it would be like this, and he's sure true. Very good.
Well, Rick said it'd be like this. Rick said it'd be like this. Rick said it'd be like this. Rick said it would be like this.
Rick Lance in the Weather Center on Idaho's News Channel.
Well, Rick is rarely wrong, so help us say goodbye and help us end the show with your text messages. 208-321-5614. Don't forget your name and the hashtag the 208.
No.
September of 2023, it was the first time the state of Idaho went into a rapid response plan for quagga mussels. It's because for more than 15 years, the Idaho State Department of Ag was working to prevent these invasive mussels from, well, invading. And they did that through more than 1 million boat inspections and more than 15,000 water samples. But as soon as they were spotted, the state implemented that aggressive treatment plan as a rapid response to avoid these mussels from growing.
Here at Centennial Waterfront Park, crews are deploying these boxes along the Snake River. They're full of a copper-based formula called Natrix meant to eradicate the quagga mussels. The metered boxes have been placed along the Snake River from the Twin Falls Dam to Centennial Park. The treatment will take place over 10 days until October 13th. The formula is expected to dissipate about 16 miles downstream from Centennial Park. The Idaho State Department of Agriculture says they're acting fast and aggressive to stop a potential crisis that could impact Idaho's hydropower, irrigation, and recreation.
ISDA says that first treatment of this type and scale was the first ever in North American waters. Fast forward a year later to about now, and a small number of quagga mussels were again detected in the Snake River near Twin Falls. So how did we get here, and where do we go from here? Here's Hunter Funk.
What's happened in this year?
More stations, more hours, more cooperators, more communication. You name it, we have expanded it. We have doubled our sampling statewide, so we're not just focused on the Mid-Snake, even though that's an impacted area. We continue to be focused on the entire state. The invasive species program has really expanded. It is more important than it's ever been. The numbers that we saw of quagga mussels last year was a tiny amount. It's alarming, we don't want any. But it is by no means a massive infestation yet, and that's why we know we can treat. Fast forward to September of 2024, and we unfortunately got some results of villagers on the Snake River. However, we want to be really clear, there is a significant reduction in what we saw last year. And what we now know going into a treatment is like, we're going to treat again. We're going to do this big, giant thing all over again that no other state even attempts to do. But we're going to do it with a lot of lessons learned.
What are some of the things that you're approaching now for this next cycle that are different than how you approached it a year ago?
We are able to interpret the data with more complexity and more nuance and see some of the context around it. So last year, where we were very focused on where villagers are, that's where treatment goes. And I think we have confidence this year, I know we have confidence this year, to say we can go farther upriver. And that is a better treatment strategy without many downsides, and that's going to work better. And again, apply additional tools, additional treatment strategies.
Now, if you remember, that treatment is pretty strong and there's a high fish mortality. But if the mussels grow to a point where it's out of control, that fish can die from that. So it's because all that bacteria takes out all the good things in the water. So they're still being aggressive with it and hope for the best.
Okay, so I assume this is included in their budget. Where's this money coming from?
Yeah, so they actually were really smart. 2008, we talked about how they were already taking steps. Well, people buy those tags for their boats.
Right.
That money was going towards trying to prevent it. Okay. So all that money ended up getting used for last year, and then we just got approved $6.6 million by legislature to keep going towards this.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It's also very important to reiterate, I mean, rinsing off boats, any watercraft, I don't care if it's a kayak or a raft, make sure that's all washed off when you take it out of the water.
100%.
All right, thank you very much, Hunter. Whew, it is warm out there today. Or maybe I just got a fever, and the only prescription is more Rick Lance. Let's take it back to 1988.
You know, one of the things that I like about living in Idaho, especially this time of year, is how friendly the people are. Idaho's a great place to make friends. So next time you see me out enjoying the weather, say howdy.
Well, you'll soon see Rick out there enjoying the weather a lot more. More chances to say howdy. Let's start now. Text us about Rick or anything else we've talked about today. 208-321-5614. Include your name and the hashtag the 208 and stick around. We could share yours at the end of today's show.
been quite the toasty afternoon today, but we do have some changes on the way as a cold front moves in. So you may be feeling some of those winds pick up or seeing some light showers right now. But a lot more of that activity has been more towards the northeastern Oregon area where we've had some spotty thunderstorms and those light showers. If we look to the south of Oregon, southeast corner of Oregon, you can see a little bit of that activity, but I doubt much of that moisture is making it all the way to the ground. The most widespread impact, I think, will be the winds. We're not talking about damaging winds, but they will be a little bit more on the powerful side at times as the front passes. So we could see some blowing dust. Maybe your wind chimes get a little bit noisy and maybe even a couple rumbles of thunder for some of those more areas to the north. So you can see those hot temperatures right now, and you can see a big cool down by tomorrow, about 10 degrees cooler. More of the high 80s, even a couple 90s on the way throughout the 7-day forecast. But overall, things are looking very pleasant, and I could easily forecast lots of well wishes, maybe even a couple tears, because we continue to celebrate a really big week here.
Oh, getting so many text messages today. We're going to share a lot of those tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. But we are winding down the 42-year career here of Rick Lance by looking back at some of these memorable moments. You've seen some of them so far, those commercials.
So good.
You said the animals were talking about
Yes.
all about that.
I don't know what we were thinking in the 80s, but boy, I don't know what we were doing.
I remember the person who was promoting those.
Do you? Okay, well, maybe we can have a chat with them after the show.
Pam Laws. Yeah,
Okay.
She was the one that did it years ago.
Okay, so 1991, though. This is one of our favorite KTVB ads featuring Rick Lance. How about you? Do you remember this one?
Let me see.
Let's see. Let's see it.
Come on to the best, only on Channel 7.
Ooh, yeah. Our place is your place. Our house is your house. Come celebrate with us and
Yeah, I do remember
There
this.
it is.
Yes.
There you are.
With Bob O.
NBC was big.
Wow.
Yeah, it was huge. Johnny Carson.
Okay, so when they brought these ideas to you, say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to mimic what all the national stars are doing. You were like, cool, let's do it?
We did those quite a bit. Well, we had to. Yeah, it was just, as you can see, that was our job, and that's what we were doing at the time. I got to tell you a story, though, because with Larry Gebert, he was a part of these promos as well for so many years. We were together out 35 years, and I think you were there for a long, long time with him as well. And we did a promo one time here in the studio where they said, it's just not going to work. Larry's 6'6", I'm 5'9".
Right.
Okay, and they said, put Rick on a box. So they put me in a box, and I stood there, and when I was on this box, I was 2 inches taller than Larry. So we did the promo. We didn't even think about this, but Larry said every time I went out in public, they said, how tall is Rick Lance?
Because they see, like,
Because they look at him, and then they think he's taller than him. But that's how
amazing.
powerful the media was at that time. Yeah, everybody saw it.
Everybody said it. We're getting all kinds of messages, like I said, and we're going to share some of them tomorrow. But a lot of people saying they spent so many years growing up with the entire KTVB crew.
They did.
And they appreciate all that you've done to make them more comfortable.
We appreciate everything that you guys have done, too, because it was their support that made it all possible.
Yeah. All
We
right.
really feel so.
We're going to really dig into it tomorrow. So
Okay.
we'll be back for at least one more day, Rick.
One more day.
One more day.
I'll be here.
All right, 7 more comments on HGR5 that is on your November ballot. This one from B&B in Nampa says, so someone from out of state came to speak about a problem with non-citizens voting that we don't have. Here we go again, trying to fix an issue that we don't have. It's just more fear-mongering about voting and who should not be on the ballot. HGR5 is part of the GOP attack on immigrants and the elections in general. Make people think the democratic systems are broken so they can replace it with dictatorships where we don't have to worry about voting anymore. Remember, we're a land of immigrants, says Tony. If we were to go illegally into Mexico or Canada or any other country, would they be allowed to vote in their elections? Every country except the U.S. has voter ID that determines eligibility, and we do that as well. You can't vote in Idaho, you can't vote in the country without a legal ID that says you are allowed to vote. That hasn't changed. This just kind of adds a little bit of redundancy to our Constitution. So we'll get to the rest of them possibly at the end of this week. We'll see you then.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.